This might be one of the most important videos that I could offer in regards to the world of addiction recovery. Doesn't matter if it's alcohol, drugs, or food, or whatever it might be. I mentioned alcohol and drugs, the false high. I want to talk about this. I think this is crucial to understand as we go into recovery, or you may be considering sobriety, you may be considering permanent recovery from one of these drugs or alcohol. If you're like me, oh my Lord, I struggled for 30 years with alcohol and cocaine, and found out that I was covering up a lot of stuff. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm David Essel, 43 years now as a counselor, executive master coach, number one best-selling author, lots of different titles underneath my name, but we'll stop right there. The most important thing is the world of addiction right now. We have a huge increase in alcohol consumption. We have the huge problems with heroin / fentanyl. There's so many individuals now that are utilizing marijuana, medical marijuana, pot, etc., on a daily basis throughout the day, which means they now are addicted. If you can't get through a day without a substance, that's called an addiction. But anyway, listen to this. So in 1990, the very first time that I interviewed Deepak Chopra, we were talking about addiction. And now in 1990, it wasn't until 1995, 96 that I had this amazing awakening and had to get clean. In 1990 is when I had my failed suicide attempt, and it blew out the doors, showing how much my addiction was covering up depression, anxiety, etc. And it was a number of years later, just a few years later, that I had to really get cleaned out. But I want to tell you, when I interviewed Deepak and we were talking about the world of addiction, he made a comment. And he said, David, he goes, anything that an outside source can do, like alcohol or drugs, to bring us to an elevated level, the brain can do without those drugs or alcohol. And I remember thinking, that's a really cool philosophical idea, but I can't believe it, because how am I going to get high? How am I going to reach those levels that I get with alcohol and cocaine without alcohol and cocaine? So I went along with him because I said, well, I'm open to learning, right? But I didn't really buy into it. Even though he gave examples, he said, if someone happens to really love cocaine, and I'm going, oh my God, he's talking about me, right? He goes, if you put him on a roller coaster, you get him to jump out of an airplane, they're going to get the same freaking high. It's going to be a very similar, amazing experience for that person. And I started thinking, wow, the brain is that powerful, right? And then we go to Dr. David Hawkins, one of my favorite researchers. And around in the 80s, he released a book, I think it was in the 80s, Power versus Force. And in there, when I started reading his research, I was blown away about the fake high from alcohol and drugs. And we could even say sugar, because that's such a powerful drug. But the fake high is this: you consume the alcohol in order to numb the lower emotions of anxiety, depression, low self-confidence, low self-esteem, PTSD, ADD, ADHD, right? So you're taking these drugs to escape the lower emotions, and they do that for a short period of time. Cocaine, alcohol, sugar can numb the lower emotions. Now, so you can relate, when I went through what I went through, the trauma in 1990 and came out of it, we found that I had undiagnosed clinical depression, general anxiety disorder, ADD and ADHD. That all came from this almost losing my life in 1990 when I started really working with medical professionals. And I went through so many different professionals. One person would say, you have clinical depression. I'd say, it can't be. I'm David Essel. I'm Mr. Motivation. I'd go to the next professional. They'd come up with the same diagnosis. At some point, I had to accept the truth that I was using these substances to cover up the lower emotions, just like David Hawkins' research has shown. So what happens is that it works perfectly. Cocaine, alcohol, sugar, whatever drug you want to use, right? They inhibit that lower emotion. Peer pressure, which is an example of low self-esteem. Well, that's lowered. We call alcohol liquid courage. Why? Because it lowers our insecurities to the point where we feel high. But we're not high. All we are is feeling the real us. We're feeling the real us. But the damage that the drugs and alcohol does is incredible, because over time you need to have more to get to that quote unquote fake high. But the high doesn't stay. And then you do it again the next day or the next weekend or the next whatever to feel invincible. I can remember when I was doing cocaine and alcohol with a couple people, we would stay up till 8 in the morning talking about how we're going to write 15 #1 best-selling books, and we're going to create this community of individuals living off the land. I mean, oh my Lord, we talked and talked and talked, and we thought we were high. We were us without the lower emotions. The lower emotions were covered up. And then we felt that way, right? And so what's the key here? The key here is to say, okay, I'm using alcohol or nicotine or sugar or heroin, fentanyl or cocaine or whatever. What am I covering up? So then let's say we go away from the substance and we get to the core and we work through the low self-confidence, dealing with peer pressure, codependency, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and we put our emphasis into that. And then instead of taking the drugs to bring us to an elevated level, we start to use our mind. And it might be through deep meditation practices. It may be through deep mindfulness practices. It may be by switching to a career where you feel in flow. Doing what you do for 4, 6, 8 hours a day is effortless. Now we're in that natural high. Instead of using the drugs and alcohol, we say, let me put myself in nature. And let that feeling be there, free of anxiety, depression, peer pressure, PTSD, etc., 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 free of keeping up with the Joneses, for God's sake, right? This is incredibly powerful information that we want to get out and share this darn stuff. Oh my Lord, share it. What I found when I got rid of the drugs and alcohol is that I had to search and find, how do I feel the real me? How do I take care of and dramatically diminish my anxiety, clinical depression, ADD, ADHD, all of this different stuff? How do I learn to deal with it without having to get high to feel the real David Essel? And you may find that chanting will do it. You may find playing a musical instrument will do it. You may find walking the beach will do it. You may find building a sandcastle will do it. You may find going out in nature and allowing the sun to beam on your face as you become one with all around you. I'm just throwing ideas out. But this concept that alcohol and drugs gets us high has been obliterated. I mean, we're talking about the 80s, right? David Hawkins, grab the book, Power vs. Force. Read it for yourself. Levels of consciousness. We raise in levels of consciousness. Ram Dass told me this amazing story years and years ago when he went to India to find his guru. And the guru said, what are you looking for? And he said, to become one with God. And the guru said, oh, that's awesome. This is what we do. And he said to Ram Dass, he said, how are you doing it now? And he said, with this. And he held up a bag of acid, LSD. And the guru said, what's that? He said, oh, it's acid. We take it and we become one with God and all. And he goes, let me see the bag. And he puts 100 hits of acid in his mouth. And Ram Dass is freaking out, going, what are you doing? You're going to kill yourself. An hour passes and the guru's sitting there and he says, I'm already one with God. These substances don't do anything because I'm already there. What you think these substances are bringing you are available without anything at all. Let me teach you. Let me take you. And Ram Dass became his protege. And he went on now to teach the power of, deep meditation. And there's so many different deep breath work can bring you to an altered state. Meditation can bring you to an altered state. Walking meditation can bring you to an altered state. Walking prayer can bring you to an altered state. Go ahead and Google in the Muslim faith, believe it or not, there is this this extremely highly elevated portion of that religion where they are the dancers that actually bring in that elevation, that high through spinning and spinning and spinning. It's incredible when we see these individuals doing their dance and how they are elevated and escalated with no drugs, no alcohol, no substances at all. Native Americans in so many of their ceremonies with their chanting and dancing would reach high levels of ecstasy, high levels of human consciousness without any drugs whatsoever. So I want you to think about this and really take this in. right? Really take all of this in and realize that we can be the creators of our own high, but we have to deal with the lower energy emotions and then add to that the whirling dervishes, right? And that's the name of these individuals in Islam that find themselves, and they calibrate at an incredibly high level of human consciousness. And we have to look at these individuals that aren't using substances, but are connecting higher and higher on a regular basis and understanding that that's you and I as well. If you need help, because this can be confusing, this can not seem to make sense, this can seem illogical, but it's the truth, contact me at talkdavid.com, or I'll leave the information below, davidessel.com, whatever. And let's explore this. We have a permanent alcohol addiction recovery program. It's permanent. It's for the rest of your life. You'll no longer even say I'm an ex-addict or an ex-alcoholic or an ex-whatever. There's no such thing anymore. You're just going to be you at the highest level possible, without any labels, without any substances. Share this video. Let's make a difference in this world now. I'm David Essel. I'm in your freaking corner. I've gone through the battles. I've gone through the addictions. I've tried all kinds of just different recovery programs. We've been teaching recovery for over 30 years, and we continue to elevate our program as we learn more and more and more. And it's just hilarious that what Deepak Chopra said in 1990, anything that a drug or a substance can create, you can create with your own mind. I knew it was true, but I didn't know the practical application. Now we know. Take care of the lower energy emotions, the low self-confidence, the low self-esteem, the anxiety, depression, PTSD. Work through those as you add possibly nature experiences or spiritual experiences or flow experiences through music or art or dance. We can do this together. I'm David Essel. Have a beautiful day.